Welcome back. We have a great topic for you today. Dominate your farm and how to 10x your leads and your loyalty. This is, again, something that a lot of you have been requesting. You're building geographic farms, which we're big advocates of. But there's smart farms and there's dumb farms. And the smart farm is the one that creates generations of, fruit, vegetables, harvest.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Look at it that way.
And a dump farm is just basically where you're essentially throwing money into the ground and you're never even getting any benefit from it. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be going through some suggestions and how you actually can build a really good, frankly, a farm that can feed you for generations. So stay focused. We're going to go through these notes. And as always, these notes are going to be available to you when you are a HarrisRealEstateDaily.com subscriber. So just go to HarrisRealEstateDaily.com and subscribe to the newsletter. If you're listening to us on iTunes or on YouTube or wherever else you're listening to us, the link is down below. Just click it. But that is the way you can get all of these notes. And we strongly encourage you to download the notes and feel free to use them for your own social media, for your own, coaching and training maybe of your agency or team. So just go to HarrisRealEstateDaily.com.
All right, so back to how to dominate your farm, 10x your leads and your loyalty. This is a two-part series, and today is part one. We're going to teach you specifically how to create a must-keep community resource that positions you as the local specialist and turns homeowners into loyal clients. It's called the Neighborhood Directory, and that's going to be a marketing tool for you. Creating a neighborhood directory will establish you as a hyper-local agent. When done correctly, it provides overwhelming value. This geographic farming tool is superior to spending tons of money and time on direct mail campaigns, which typically only give you a 1% to 3% return on your investment. And even that is after you've done it repetitively.
Well, you want to level off there?
Sure.
So we did direct mail when we were in real estate. And I've had a lot, Julie and I both have had droves of coaching clients that have been very successful with direct mail campaigns. There's a lot of pieces and parts that go into basically doing an effective direct mail campaign. How much did you go into that into the notes today?
Not past this too much.
Well, okay. So let me go and talk about what some suggestions are. Before you start a direct mail campaign, the number one thing you want to do is make sure you're direct mailing to a community or a neighborhood where there's actually enough, transactional volume to justify the expense. You can easily, I remember a coaching client, I remember when I studied this coaching client's numbers and looked into their MLS and realized that the neighborhood that they had been investing, it was a lot of money, like $20,000 a year or something.
Yeah.
In this particular community. It had one of the slowest moving markets I'd ever seen. Nobody ever put their houses for sale. And this agent, remember, new coaching client, hadn't taken the time to actually figure it out. So what you're going to want to do is if you're going to invest into a community, you want to have there to be a fair number of homes turning over on a regular basis. And I'll give you another advanced coaching tip. You need to direct mail or consider direct mailing to one of those intermediate move-up type neighborhoods because that's where you're going to get the potential for multiple transactions. It's probably a neighborhood like you live in, right? And so that's going to be a neighborhood where maybe first-time home buyers or maybe move-up buyers are moving towards, and then those buyers are then, they're going to be of the age where they're then going to want to move up. If you're farming in an area where essentially it's going to be a lot of elderly people, which was the example I gave you with this person I was referring to, that coaching client, those folks are not going to be, they're not going to put their homes for sale very often. And when they do, they're probably not going to be purchasing something else from you. And by the way, the houses need rehabbed. So unless the neighborhood has got something really special, they're going to be harder homes to sell. You guys get it? But this agent had made the mistake and just decided to invest in that particular neighborhood because that's where they lived.
Well, exactly. So let's hover on that for a second. You have to, if you're going to do direct mail, and it will work eventually, you have to do it not just once, not just when you feel starved for leads. You can't dabble in it. You can't try this neighborhood today and a neighborhood across town tomorrow and then just wait. You're not going to get results that way. Second thing that I think we want to highlight that you just said, just because you personally live in that neighborhood does not necessarily mean it's a great neighborhood to farm. And just because you like a neighborhood, maybe you just love this neighborhood that's full of $2 or $3 million houses and you'd love to dominate in there. If it doesn't turn over enough, it's not something you should be investing in.
But here's the biggest thing, and Julie was leading me up to it, is if you are trying to direct mail into a market where there's already a ton of agents doing really high-end, high-quality direct mail, you're probably wasting your time. And so here's what you do. You go to the MLS, and look just on the listing side of transactions. Always study the listing side. If you're trying to find out who dominates the market, it's always going to be a specific listing agent. But here's statistically what you see. You'll see an agent with 40% market share typically. And then you'll see two agents that are fighting every single day for the second position. And they're maybe trying to battle over like 20% market share. And then the rest is just listings that, maybe it's a relo agent that gets the listing or just that type of thing. But if you go to a market where there's a dominant agent, number one, a dominant agent number two, a dominant agent number three, and they're all doing direct mail, which is usually what you'll discover, and you try to be another agent in there that's doing direct mail, you're probably never going to get any results from it because it's already oversaturated. And that's also true for social marketing too. So you got to be very strategic on the areas that you choose. And I'll give you some suggestions. Look for newer construction areas where, frankly, there's probably not going to be a lot of well-established agents in those particular areas. If you're in Miami or New York, one of our other great markets, the buildings are fantastic because there's, generally speaking, not going to be well-established agents in there. And that leads up perfectly to what the ultimate direct mail piece is, which we're going to be talking about now. But again, keep all these things into consideration. Just doing direct mail is not going to get you the results. Doing direct mail strategically into an area where it's not oversaturated, and then what you direct mail really matters too.
Yes, that's exactly right. So what we're going to talk about today is something that, in my opinion, can trump all of that. Because if you think about direct mail, and we're not necessarily coaching you to not do it, but first of all, you have to have a budget that's ongoing. It's not free. Secondly, there's all of these different factors that we just talked about that could make it work or not work for you. So today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics that I do have many coaching clients doing, and that is called creating a neighborhood directory. That's going to establish you as the hyper-local agent. Okay, so it's a piece of your marketing that nobody's ever going to throw away. Your picture, your contact information, your call to action will live in their kitchen next to their phone charging station forever, making this a valuable lead generation tool in the area that you want to list and sell in. And again, even with this neighborhood directory idea, you need to do the same research that you would on the normal direct mail. Is it worth investing in? Does it actually turn over?
Well, just really to drill down on that. Again, be smart. Are there already agents making neighborhood directories in this target neighborhood you're considering? If there are, don't bother doing it.
Right.
And I would also, Julie, would you go to the effort of doing a directory if there were well-established agents that were doing a lot of other direct mail?
Probably not.
It could still work, but I wouldn't either.
It's going to be harder.
It is definitely going to be harder because people are, people don't
take longer.
People don't pay attention to the things that, when they get so much stuff in the mail or even digitally, they just stop. You don't look at it. I don't look at it, right? Nobody
It's like
does.
the second or third time you drive under a billboard, you no longer register it.
Exactly. But Julie's point ultimately is if you're going to choose to go after an area, do your homework first. Secondary point is definitely build it off the back of a neighborhood directory and then do your direct mail secondarily because the directory is ultimately going to it doesn't get thrown out and it's going to be something that everyone is really going to appreciate you having put together versus, say, for example, another just sold sign or another just, listed postcard.
Exactly. Okay, now, your goal is to make your neighborhood directory so valuable that it's a coveted book of information provided by you, the real estate specialist for that neighborhood. And we're going to drill down on exactly how to go about this. This has been a special request from many coaching clients, including my own. Okay, so how do you get information for the directory? I wrote down 4 different ways. Get the information from your homeowners association, assuming that you get one, and assuming that you have one for the neighborhood you're going after. Get permission to republish it, but it probably already exists. You can get the information by door knocking and sending out a postcard with instructions on how to respond. You can get the information by creating a private Facebook group and or WhatsApp group for the neighborhood, asking for the contact information. And what I recommend is to do all of the above so that you get as much information and that it's as accurate as possible.
Now let's go to it. Let's take this from a different stance. Let's say if you do create some kind of public forum where you're going to basically the WhatsApp or the Facebook group type thing, personally, I wouldn't do that for collecting information because people are always going to take an adversarial approach. They're going to throw up some red herrings about, what about, why are you publishing this information? Who's going to have access? All these silly things. So here's another way of looping back to this. There are various ways that you can go about getting folks information. There's all kinds of list companies. Julie mentioned the HOA list, all these things.
You can do it for free if you go to the door.
Right. Well, right. But let's say, for example, you can find all the neighborhood directory information already. You can get it someplace, wherever the someplace is. You get a list online. You get it from the HOA. Go ahead and create your directory and then absolutely put together a draft of it. And then when you're door knocking, show them the completed draft and ask them if the information is current. In other words, they're already in the directory. You're not asking them if they want to be in the directory. They're already in the directory. When you're communicating with them, you're just asking them to verify the information is accurate.
I like that better.
Yeah, me too. And you can get this information all other places. It kind of falls under the whole beg for forgiveness opposed to asking for permission.
Yeah, but our point here is that you have no excuse. It is gettable, and this is the first step. And we're going to talk about what else to put into your neighborhood guide in a second.
By the way, the same concept also scales to church directory, synagogue directory,
Yep.
anything that involves a lot of people in a community, same concept. But again, put it together and then have people just verify the information is correct and maybe add information to it, which Julie's about to talk about.
Yes, and speaking of which, there are a lot of notes to today's podcast and tomorrow's, so how can they get this so that they can put it into action?
Well, like I said at the top of the show, they can go to harrisrealestatedaily.com and download the notes, harrisrealestatedaily.com. And a lot of our premier coaching clients are obviously loving this idea too.
Mm-hmm.
This is such a perfect time of year to be doing this kind of thing.
I love it.
Because it gives you multiple excuses to go out and get, hello, this is another great year for home appreciation. And by the way, I'm putting together this directory, and here's how your information is listed. Is this accurate? Is there anything else you want me to add to it, or any whatever? It's going to put you in a constant position of being, contributing to the community at a time of year where, generally speaking, people are a little bit, chill. Really, for the most
Exactly,
part.
and agents are always searching for something to give a value, right? Isn't that what we always say?
Well, Julie, think about this. So agents spend, it's kind of funny agents spend probably millions and millions of dollars every year around November to give out pumpkin pies.
Yes.
I mean, if you guys haven't heard of
And
that.
calendars and magnets and tchotchkes and stuff.
Exactly, and stuff. Well, your contribution is going to be creating a neighborhood directory, and you're going to go in direct contact with them. They're going to see your smiling face. They're going to like you, appreciate you, realizing what you're trying to do is to help the neighborhood, because this directory is not just phone numbers so they can call their neighbor, but it's also we're also going to suggest that you put information in there where people can put their kids' names. Like we mentioned this the other day on the podcast. Okay, I won't step on any of your points.
That's okay. It's coming up. So let's see. Recommended versions of the neighborhood guide. You mentioned you can do this for smaller groups as well, but what we recommend is start with your own neighborhood because you know it best. Again, put it through the ringer, make sure that it's worth going after and that there's not already a huge dominant agent there. But for most of you, you can start with your own neighborhood. Next, you can do your geographic farm or mini farms. For example, you could choose 2 or 3 neighborhoods that you've researched and know have good turnover. If you already have some neighborhoods where you've had several sales, and I can think of most of my private coaching clients, this is their scenario. You've had several sales in these particular neighborhoods. You can create guides for those. The homeowners have already seen your sold sign there so that it's going to have more impact faster.
I need to add something. So
Sure.
if you're trying to choose which neighborhood, and don't again assume that's just the neighborhood you live in, though that might be the best one because you're going to obviously have the most influence. But make sure if you're choosing a new neighborhood, you got to go in there and, like where Julie and I sold real estate when we were in New Albany, Ohio, there were a lot of homeowners that lived in New Albany, Ohio, because they worked at the Limited, Victoria's Secret, Bath and Body Works, all those brands. They were all essentially working. Most of them were working at one of those companies. Well, the unfortunate fact is a lot of those sellers, a lot of those owners, when they went to put their homes for sale, were going to be dealing through a relocation company, which meant the relocation company was going to have a ton of influence on who they chose to be their listing agents. Well, in those particular cases, every time that the seller wanted to do business with us and list their home with us, and they were attached to a relocation company, we had to do battle with the relocation company. Even though they didn't refer us the lead, we still got coerced into paying them some referral fee. So again, look to the complexities of your various neighborhoods. And if you're considering working in a particular neighborhood and it is dominated like ours were, where essentially people are working for companies that are going to always be sending them through relocation companies, then you might want to consider maybe not choosing that neighborhood. Or if you still want to choose that neighborhood, make sure you get in with that relocation company. And we're going to do an upcoming podcast on how to go about doing that.
Yes. Okay, now a top tip. Let's say there's a neighborhood that turns over well that you've been dying to break into, and you're going to do a directory for that. While you're doing that and getting your directory ready, prospect the expireds there, the for sale by owners there, temporarily off the market and withdrawn homes so that you can start to get your foothold even while you're creating that directory. That's just a mini side tip. Okay. Now, create a neighborhood-specific, information-rich, must-have resource for everyone in the directory. For example, we're going to go through a list of what you should include and what you could include to make it even more robust, to make it evergreen, a neighborhood directory. Remember, the more value you provide, the more likely it is to be an effective, long-lived marketing piece for you. So what should you include in your neighborhood directory? And we're going to go quickly through about 10 items, and then tomorrow we'll have a continuation of this. So this is assembling it. And again, Tim told you how to get the notes. So number 1, a clean, easy to read neighborhood map. You can find these online at your county auditor's website. You can ask your title agent for a plat map or obtain it from your own closing documents if it's your neighborhood. Neighborhood homeowners associations are another excellent resource for finding it, and ask the builder for a map if it's a newly built community. All right, so next we have resident addresses and contact information. Include family members and pets to make it more personal. We talked about how to gather that.
Well, the pets thing, I'm going to drill down on that, right?
I think that's kind of fun.
The fact is that if, I mentioned this again last week on the show, but if you have a directory that's going to be including people's pets, this breed of dog, this color, if you see that dog meandering about on the street and you obviously are able then to identify whose dog it is, that's going to put you in a real great position to help that family out, and vice versa too. So really be thinking about, it's not just a phone book. That's not what we're suggesting. It's not just like someone's, name and their phone number and their address.
It's a tool.
It's a tool, and it's a safety thing. It's a way for everyone to essentially create a tighter sense of community by knowing a little bit more about each other, so everyone can have each other's backs. And that's a way of explaining it when you're explaining to the sellers and the owners really why they should be included and what other information they should include.
Yes, and you just reminded me of something. Coach Rochelle just sent me one of her pop buys, which is really cute. She created, those little vinyl clings that you can put on your front windows that say, if in case of emergency or fire, I've got 2 dogs and a cat and a reptile inside, please save them. And it's a cute picture of cats and dogs, and it's sponsored by her. This is one of her pop buys. You could include that when you go to deliver your
mean
directory.
for firefighters?
For firefighters or for emergency people.
That is a good idea.
It is very cool. And she says she walks her dog through the community and she sees all of her vinyl clings on people's front windows. So
that's
kind
actually
of fun.
hilarious.
Isn't that great?
Imagine if one of those people with the vinyl clings put their house for sale, and say they're making, they're interviewing 3 agents and Rochelle's one of the agents, and the agent's walking up to the front door and sees Rochelle's vinyl cling.
And now they're going to be, oh!
That's going to take the air out of the balloon, isn't it?
Exactly. So I just had to mention that and give her a shout out.
idea.
It is. Okay, so the next thing is names and numbers for community service providers. For example, homeowners association, where and how to pay your HOA dues, utility companies, gas, water, sewer, trash, electric, internet providers, and don't forget Starlink, because pretty much everywhere has Starlink, local emergency services, of course, police, fire, hospitals, 911, home services. Now, here's something interesting. You could include your go-to providers. Like when you get a home inspection that has that grocery list of stuff, and you're going to call your handyman, your roofer, carpenter, exterminator, all of those go-to service providers, you could include those in there. Trash removal, you could also include Goodwill, Volunteers of America, places to make donations, painters, generator servicers, whatever works in your neighborhood. You've got your own collection of things. Okay, again, this is a resource, this is a tool, this is something you want the people in the neighborhood who have your guide, your directory, to go to it and use it all the time, because they're flipping through that, and every time they open it, of course, you're going to have your ad on the back.
Would you also suggest that they include, this is really drilling down, but would you also suggest they include the types of cars and maybe even the license plates? That way if somebody sees
You certainly could.
Right. I would, honestly.
Yep.
That way, that's what happens a lot of times is people will see some strange truck that is kind of combing through the neighborhood at the same time that, kids go off the school bus or whatever. And that truck doesn't belong in the neighborhood. That's weird.
It fosters community to have each other's backs,
Well,
right?
again, this is how you guys can convince the folks to want to participate in this and not just shut it down with the idea, people's natural, I think, first order behavior with virtually anything is to be a skeptic. So you're really going to have to lay into the fact that you're doing this for a safety and security reason. That's your dominant motivation. And you'll get people really grateful once they realize what your motivation is.
That's right. Okay, number 3, school contact numbers. Consider adding the football schedule. Whatever is hot in your neighborhood, you can beef that up, but certainly the main school contact numbers. Okay, next is the category of recreation, parks, gyms, community centers, sports facilities, pools, websites, and contact numbers for the common recreation things that people like to do. Next one is number 5, dining and shopping, recommended restaurants, cafes, and shops. And here's another hint. Again, go back to your database and include businesses that your past clients and your centers of influences own. Next is number 6, community events calendar, annual and seasonal events in the area. Maybe some of those you're sponsoring yourself. And then number 7, my favorite, and that's you. Your picture, contact information, and calls to action should be on the back cover. For example, sponsored by Julie Harris, eXp Realty, your Hidden Valley neighborhood specialist. Call me today for all of your real estate needs. I'm here for you and your family, whether buying, selling, investing, or just real estate curious. So that's your evergreen marketing piece that sits next to their phone.
And every year or every quarter or even every month, look for the turnovers. I mean, there could be a new construction home that got built, or maybe there was a transaction that happened that you weren't part of. Well, you want to keep your directory updated, and then maybe release a new directory every 6 months or annually. But the point is just keep it really current. So, Julie, what's point number 8?
Number 8, your promotion. Any of your promotions can have a page as well. For example, something we used to do: buy or sell with me and adopt a pet for free in conjunction with your local ASPCA or other animal shelter or rescue organization. We have talked, I think we did a podcast last month about your 12-month center of influence, like your events and your parties and your giveaways and things like that. So if you've got some promotions that you do consistently, like buy or sell with me, adopt a pet for free, you can run that all the time. Then that can have a half page. It could be, the second half of your page on the back, but you can certainly do that. You're the sponsor of the guide, so you get to decide.
Now, if you want to do social media to reinforce your effort and reinforce the brand of you being someone who's truly there to contribute to the neighborhood, part of the community, go ahead and do it. But this social media is not going to replace. Brand building on social media is great if it's reinforcing what you're actually doing in real life. And so doing this newsletter, and you have now, doing the directory, and now you have everyone's contact information, you should consider building up some Facebook campaigns around, to reinforce you as their neighborhood specialist. That's going to put you in a killer position. So just do keep these things in mind as you're really scaling up your influence in a particular neighborhood. And over time, this really truly is how you become an influencer. If all you're going to do is the social media and say you're an expert in a particular neighborhood over a particular price range, but you haven't done any transactional volume or earned the right to truly be of influence to those prospective sellers, they're not even going to pay attention to your messaging. This is how you earn a seat at the table.
Well, this is providing something of value, isn't it? So number 9, publish the links to those neighborhood Facebook pages or WhatsApp groups, like Tim just mentioned. And then number 10, if you've got, maybe not every neighborhood has this, but a lot of them do, and that's a neighborhood history page you can do. You can include pictures of historical landmarks with a little description, notable architects or builders, famous people who once lived there, or interesting facts. So for example, one of the neighborhoods we originally sold in was, and we have rentals in today, is called Beechwold. That's in area of Columbus, Ohio. It used to be called Zooland because there was a zoo there once. The monkey cages are still in somebody's backyard. And I didn't know that. I didn't realize, one of the streets is named Elks.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that came from the zoo. Do you remember that also used to have like an amusement park back in the 30s? And in the river, there's still scaffolding from the roller coasters.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's
So,
crazy.
I mean, isn't that interesting? If you sold in Beechwold, wouldn't that be a nice little fact to have in your Beechwold directory? I think that's cool.
It is fun.
I think he's still in Premier Coaching in Laguna Beach. There's a coaching client named Sean, and he does this for Laguna Beach. He does a little highlight about famous people. I think that he had something about, somebody landed a plane on the beach once. Like, there's all these kinds, like local lore. And doesn't that make you the local specialist that you know all of this stuff?
Well, but that's actually fun because you could create the directory, and it's not just a A to Z directory, but you could drop little fun facts and community stories into every one of the things.
You could do that like a little bit on each page if you wanted to.
Now, as far as how to organize this, there's actually a ton of templates online, but you know what? The cheat code for that one is just go to ChatGPT and tell it to design a neighborhood directory for you, essentially a template, and it'll give you at least a really good concept. Julie, what do you think about people including pictures in the directory?
Pictures of the people?
Pictures of themselves
You
in
could,
the directory.
kind of like a yearbook.
Yeah, I mean,
You could.
I can see that going both ways, but the reality of it is nowadays people are so sharing of all their personal
Doing it on
information.
social anyway.
Well, they're so sharing of their information anyway. This goes back to the whole security thing. Like, it's one thing to know that I have neighbors that the last name is Smith that live 10 streets over. It's another thing for me to know what they look like. And again, if there's somebody in the community that doesn't necessarily, fit there, that you're a little suspicious, and they're in the Smith's driveway, you can then essentially look up in this directory and see it's not the Smiths, so maybe it's time to call the police. That kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely has value. And again, that's an example of why somebody wouldn't throw that directory out. Now,
what you do on the back end of this to reinforce this is Julie's talking about essentially creating a Facebook page or a WhatsApp page. You got to be careful as to what way you want to run that, because if you run the Facebook page as a moderator, you can control what gets posted, and you can control, set up community guidelines and make it a private page, or you can make it a public page. WhatsApp it's a little bit more wild, wild west. There's still administrative controls, but and sometimes in WhatsApp, the conversations are just flowing. And if one of the conversations starts to go negative, because that happens, are you going to be the one that's going to be held accountable for the results of that, essentially WhatsApp group becoming a big, stew? So you've got to be considering how much time you want to put into taking the directory concept and making it digital. I would do it, but I'd make sure that I was always in charge of what was getting posted by who, and then editing or essentially removing posts that were adversarial. A lot of that stuff happens in communities, especially where people are really wound up. Oh yeah, you mentioned Laguna Beach. I remember people literally, we were in, Julie and I lived in this place called Arch Beach, which overlooked the Pacific Ocean. We had a second home there. And if a tree of one of the neighbors' properties
I remember this
grew like an inch above whatever was the norm, I swear you could not. The nicest, sweetest, laid back people would become.
Their mind.
It would go nuts.
It's an inch into their view. I know,
Exactly.
I know,
So
I
those
know.
types of things. So do know,
Monitor and think about what level of commitment you want to do. Online, there are some advantages to being offline with some things, is that it's kind of one and done and you update it every year. So that's okay too. We're not saying you have to do the WhatsApp and the Facebook.
But again, to the point number one, don't make this a digital project. And I know there are a lot of neighborhood directories where they're designed to be like apps. That's not what we're
But
suggesting.
that's out of sight, out of mind.
Right, exactly. It's going to be hidden someplace. How many apps do you have on your phone that you don't even remember are there, right? So you want to create something out of paper and use a good heavy stock that they're going to keep around. And you got to format it so that it's relatively large. I'm thinking 8.5 by 11.
Yes.
Don't do something that's going to get lost in their junk drawer, right? Do something that's going to dominate the junk
I
drawer.
actually asked ChatGPT about this.
Yes?
And its opinion is that it should, in fact, be 8.5 by 11. It said recommended format would look like a magazine.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Or even, taking it to the next level, you could, this is spending money, but you could still do it. Create a binder of something.
Yes, you could.
And then everyone in the neighborhood has a page or half a page in the thing.
Yeah, this is very scalable.
Yeah.
You can just do the basic stuff. You can do, we mentioned, I think, 11 different things that you should have included to make this more valuable. You do the pictures, not do the pictures. You could do it bound. You could do it spiral bound. We're going to talk more about different ways to do it tomorrow. But I think, I would say to use it as a marketing tool that lives on and is evergreen, that will benefit you. That's why we're doing this 2-part series. Ultimately, that's the point, is that your shining face is next to people's phone charging station continuously. So in order for that to work, you have to do the hard copy. The digital alone isn't going to work.
Babysitters in there. Julie said emergency services in there. Maybe there you guys
Dog
have
walkers,
dog walkers you guys might have in a community. There might be
sitters.
Exactly all of that. So have all of that in there, and then that's something that's going to be evergreen. And it's really a very powerful, really it's a very powerful way for you to plant your flag in a community as somebody who's genuinely there to help to contribute. And that's really what people are going to appreciate more than, frankly, even a bunch of sold cards. You will have to compete against the agent on a listing appointment that's, not a centers of influence, a past client, with the agent that's doing more of the, I think, about me marketing. But you will then have an advantage because you're going to absolutely know what's going on in the community, because after all, you're Mr. and Mrs. Community Organizer.
Yeah.
You created the directory.
You've provided value virtually every day for this person.
Exactly. So listen, where do you go? What's your next step? You need to join Premier Coaching. And we're making Premier, we know that some of you are teeing up to have your best years ever. Some of you are coming off having your best years ever. Regardless of where you are, definitely want to join Premier Coaching. We know you love the podcast. Thousands of you listen every single day. Over 1 million of you download every single year. This is, from what we're told, the #1 daily podcast for real estate agents in at least the United States. So please do consider joining Premier Coaching. Costs you nothing. Go to premiercoaching.com or text the word Premier
PREMIER
to 47372, either way. So you have 2 ways of joining. Go to premiercoaching.com or text the word
PREMIER, Premier.
to 47372, and you can join Premier Coaching for free. This podcast, as much as we try to make it as drilled down as we can, it's just real estate training. Real estate coaching is the next level for all of you, so you know what your action steps are. Have a fantastic day. We will present to you part 2 tomorrow.